Today we are joined by Dayna Wylder, an energy healing practitioner and author whose personal healing journey reshaped her entire understanding of the body, the mind, and the subtle layers that hold our deepest truths. From navigating trauma and chronic stress to discovering the transformative wisdom of the five koshas, Dana now guides others to reconnect with their inner healer. Her work blends ancient philosophy, somatic intelligence, modern neuroscience, and energy medicine, inviting us to see healing not as fixing, but as remembering. So, welcome, Dana. It's a pleasure to host you today.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I love talking about this.
The pleasure is all mine. So, Dana, your journey began with feeling disconnected from your body. What was the first moment that made you realize healing had to begin far beyond the physical layer?
I think that I always had a bit of a skepticism for Western medicine and the pharmacological method through having my own father who was sick, and he was an example for me in my life. He really bought into the medical system, and in my mind, it damaged him far greater. And I mean, we didn't know at the time, but the opioid crisis has taught us how detrimental treating the body and to suppress the pain was instead of treating the whole body. And body meaning the mind, the emotions, the energy, and the spirit as well. So when I received my diagnosis, I think I knew pretty early on that what they were going to offer me wasn't going to be the end for me. I knew I was going to have to dive deeper. And that first diagnosis, the doctor had very poor bedside manners, and they pretty much told me not to worry about my MS diagnosis, which I was very worried about. It's a very severe diagnosis. He told me I would probably live long enough to still die of cancer and that I should just keep good benefits and that I'll probably be in a wheelchair in 10 years. And I think my instinct right away was to reject that. And I'm really glad I did because if we believe in a poor prognosis and we live in a state of fear, it's not a very good place for healing to begin in the body, the mind, or the spirit. And so I think I knew right away that I was going to have to do something more for myself than what the doctors were offering. It's just that that happened in kind of layers for me, much like the five koshas I discuss in my book. It didn't come to me all at once what was required. I definitely knew there was an emotional and a mental component, and I did start to meditate and do yoga pretty early on in my journey, but I didn't really practice those things as a way of life or as a spiritual path. It was more something I was still just doing, right? Instead of being in the moment of it or the energy of it. And I think, like most of us, at least that come from the Western medical model, I started a lot of my journey focusing only on the physical body. And I mean, even at that point, that's still more than what the doctors were offering because my neurologist never offered me a dietitian, an occupational therapist, even neurological rehabilitation. All they offered was a $100,000 injectable medication that was going to destroy my immune system. And in my mind, that was just really inadequate for any kind of healing to really take place.
And I'm really glad that you listen to your inner voice because sometimes I feel that we know our body more than anyone else does. So, yeah, I'm glad that you recognized it and you listened to that inner voice of yours. But did that realization come with resistance, or was it a sense of relief to finally see the deeper picture?
I think you get a little bit of both, and I can appreciate for any of your listeners that are suffering with any mental or physical disease, understanding that there's more than what the doctor first gives you is both freeing because there's so many things that you can do to help yourself. And even if you only stayed in the physical realm, whether it was diet or exercise, fasting, or any of the other things you can do physically beyond what normally doctors tell you, but you can go into so many other deeper layers. But with that freedom to know that there's so many things that you can do for yourself to heal becomes the resistance of radical responsibility because we're really then charged with our own healing. Because, a doctor, even if you have a good one that might suggest alternative things or, lifestyle changes, it's really up to you as the person navigating your body in 3 dimensions and your spirit in this world. It's really up to you to make the changes that are required, and not even just changes, but to create the space and the stillness to listen to what it is that your body's trying to communicate to you. And then, direct in accordance and alignment with whatever those messages you're receiving from your higher self and those subtle signals that you receive through your body.
This open space for listeners who also feel disconnected to recognize their own turning points. So, Dana, the five koshas offer a profound map of the human experience. Which kosha was the most challenging for you to work with and why?
I think that there's 2 that stuck out the most for me. One is definitely the physical body, and I would say the reason why that one was the hardest is, first of all, those are real tangible things you need to do, right? Like, following a diet is very difficult, and especially for somebody like myself who grew up being vegetarian, but not really eating vegetables. I was, really just eating starch, sugar, caffeine. I was treating my body pretty poorly with addictions to drugs, cigarettes, alcohol. So even making those changes were pretty profound and difficult to do. And I think a lot of people get stuck even in that. And you see that in the rates of obesity, diabetes, and other things, these lifestyle factors. But treating it only in the physical body is such a limited perspective because the body is really downstream of all the things that are above it. And the body is really listening to the mind. So it's very important for us to think about what is our mind communicating to the body. And if the body is always under anxiety, stress, ruminating, negative self limiting beliefs, then even if we do all of the physical things, they don't really take hold because there's always going to be an element of self sabotage behind it. And we need to really get to the subconscious patterns that we've maybe picked up in childhood from our community, our culture, our parents. And we really need to start to unpack those so that we can live in coherence and congruency so that the things we say in our conscious mind, because I think we all say that we want to live a happier life, we want to live a healthier life, that we want to do all of these things. But why is it that so many of us fail to materialize that in the physical world? And it's because the larger part of our subconscious is not on board with the things that our conscious mind is saying. And I know that once my body really shut down and it wouldn't cooperate. And that's why I would say the physical body was one of the hardest ones to overcome for me because I physically couldn't even move my body. I couldn't stand up to cook and I couldn't do any of the things anymore to even treat my body. So it all had to fall back to the mind. And even though for years before this, I was a meditator and I did go to Zen Buddhist temple regularly, I did meditate in the morning. Sometimes I still think meditation, much like the yoga did for me at that point, feel like something I was doing and that I had to do. It was almost a task to get done instead of just being in surrender to it and being present with it. But once my body gave out on me, I had no choice but to really turn inwards because that's the only thing that I had now was a mind. Very much I lived from the neck up because my body really had disconnected. And really, that's what MS is. MS is an inability for your body and your mind to communicate. And once I was there solely living in my mind, I had to go through many layers, even just in that one layer or kosha. Because once I started to just be present with my own thoughts, because I couldn't watch TV because I couldn't see, I couldn't read a book. And the rest of my life, my family, as kind and compassionate as they were, life continued for them. So everybody left me at home, and maybe they would put many drinks around me, which I would inevitably spill throughout the day, and open some containers so I could try to feed myself. Really, I found myself just alone. And I started to realize that my optimism I thought that I had my whole life really wasn't as optimistic as I thought. I actually had a lot of negative thoughts and judgment, and more so to myself than even towards other people. I was a perfectionist, an overachiever, and hypercritical of myself. And all of a sudden, to be forced to spend so much time only in my head, it really forced me to really have a mirror held to me to see what was this environment that I was creating around my healing? And why was that the sticking point that I couldn't get past because I still fully believe that all the koshas that come from above, so our bliss body and connection to the divine, our ability to discern wisdom from the knowledge and the data we take in, the mental body and the energy body, all of those things are directing the physical body at the lower level. So if there is physically manifesting in disease and discomfort, it's definitely being shaped by the information field and directed through the energy body and down into those lower forms of being.
Definitely. This helps listeners understand that healing is multidimensional, not linear. So, you blend neuroscience with energy medicine. How do you explain the relationship between the nervous system and the energetic body to someone new to this work?
Right. So I really think both of the energy system, which you can think of as prana, as they do in Ayurvedic, or as chi in traditional Chinese medicine, but it really is the vital life force. It is the thing that animates us. And I also compare that not only to the nervous system, but to the breath, because I think all three of these things are serving a bridge between our higher realm and the physical body we live in. And when we think of the breath again is something just like energy. Without it, we fail to live, right? It's the first thing that we do when we take a breath and when we're born and we cry for the first time. And when we exhale our last breath when we die. And that animation stops happening. But the nervous system is also a bridge. So it is the bridge between our body and our mind. And when I talk about mind here, I'm going to talk about all the higher realms. So this could be the wisdom body and the bliss body, because this is where we sort of think about our consciousness, not just the avatar and the ego, but all of the things that, whether it's the witness or the thoughts that the witness is witnessing, they're all happening sort of in our mind, right? For lack of a better word to put them all together. So our nervous system has so many intricate components to it. And I think that one thing that people tend to not understand, I know we cover a lot and people talk a lot about vagus nerve, about the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. But one part that's often not discussed is afferent and efferent nervous system. And these are the nerves that either come from our motor and sensory. So they're on the skin, we feel them as pressure, as temperature, as sensation. And that's 90% of what we're taking in. That's 90% of the signals in the body is our body actually sensing the environment in the 3D world, taking that information, traveling it up the nervous system into the spine and the brain, where we then make meaning of it. And once we make meaning of it, we then only have 10% of the nervous system that's going outwards, which is directing us to move and take action in the world. And this bridge then is exactly similar to energy because you can think of your nervous system as like the energy in a house, right? It's the conduit, the wires that transmit the signals back and forth. And the nervous system is super important, the energy, the prana, because these are the things that are animating and giving like a highway and a meaning and a vessel and a way for this to move. But really, that's the energy system still communicating between mind and body, but we still need an architect somewhere in there. And this is where, the consciousness, the unified field and the divine come in. Because what is it that is directing the meaning and the expression of our higher self and our consciousness? So the nervous system and the energy and the prana to me is just like a vessel. It's a highway, a way to communicate and it is a bridge, a spiritual bridge between the unified field and the 3D existence that we live in now.
That's really fascinating. I didn't know that, the interconnection works like this, but it's very interesting to learn this. So thank you so much for sharing it in such an easier and simpler way. But is there a common misconception about energy healing that you wish more people understood differently?
Well, I can think of ones that you might talk about with people that already understand energy medicine, but I'm going to take this question from and answer it in the perspective of people that don't know very much about energy medicine and people who just think that it's like woo and just kind of out there or, because it's invisible and it's harder to quantify. But I think one of the big misconceptions and why there's so much pushback is because people think that if you use energy medicine, that you have to be like in opposition or conflict with Western medicine. And I think that this is a big misconception because just like when we think about our body only as a physical body and we don't see all the other layers, when we think about energy medicine as a standalone or as an opposition to any other modalities, it also takes the wholeness away from the being because we are a physical being and we can't get around that, at least in this reality we're living in now. And so we do need to eat and we need to drink and we need to breathe and we need to do things for our physical body. And Western medicine is pretty good at treating things in the physical body. But what energy medicine does, it adds another layer. And even in my own healing journey, I plateaued. When I was only doing yoga just as asanas or poses, and when I was, doing a clean diet, I got a little bit better for sure because I definitely was still helping my body, but I plateaued and I stopped healing. And it was when I first came upon pulse magnetic field therapy, which was a beautiful synchronicity that came into my life, that all of a sudden the lights turned back on. And it really changed my perspective immediately, literally and figuratively. I actually could see, as soon as I laid on the machine, I could see the clouds and notice how beautiful they were. I could read the traffic lights on my way out, but it would fade and it wouldn't sustain in the body because my body was still really struggling to maintain homeostasis because I was so ill. So I had to keep going back to the energy devices and add this extra energy into my body. But again, it would last temporarily and then it would leave. And it wasn't and that helped a lot because even with that temporary energy that I would receive, it gave me the opportunity to exercise a little more, to stand up and cook myself a better meal for dinner, to participate, to go out with my family. So even though it was short-lived at the time, I still appreciated it and it was still worthwhile. But again, then I hit a plateau. And I realized there's still gotta be something even beyond this. And this is when I found another layer, which is beyond even the energy field, and it's the information field. And if the information field is still corrupted or sending disharmonious or incongruent signals, then even extra energy in the body can be sent in a misdirection. So sometimes more energy isn't always better, even if the information is guiding the energy incorrectly. So when I stumbled along to bioresonance and realized that there was a way to really look at like a snapshot of the energetic body, and then to figure out what kinds of frequencies in the body were out of balance or what instructions to our blueprint were not functioning correctly, and then specifically how to correct and protect those things. And again, that falls into both a physical realm and the spiritual realm, or the mental realm, because you can do that through frequency devices where you can play harmony into the body, which reminds it how to go back to balance and where it should be resonating at. But beyond, because some people can't afford those devices or don't have practitioners in their area. And I don't want those people to feel like they'd be excluded from healing because you can do it so much with your mind. And maybe that's another misconception with energy medicine too, is that how much of it is really all governed by our mind. Our mind is such a powerful tool and it's so underappreciated. And in fact, even in most medicine, they think placebo effect is a dirty word. I personally think placebo effect is beautiful and should be drawn on and amplified because what better way to heal yourself than with your own mind with no side effects? So, your mind can be also a way to go back in and to correct the disharmonious patterns. And you can do those things through meditation, through self reflection, through trauma work, somatic work, because everything is a two-way relationship. it's not just the mind instructing the body's biochemistry through feelings, emotions, and actions, but the body also is storing things in its own information field. And that can lead the body to have, unhealthy breathing patterns or other types of anxiety or stress stored in the body, which then feeds back into the mind. But what's beautiful is that both of these parts of our bodies have a language of their own. Our mind through thoughts and through language and shapes, and our body through feelings and sensations. And if we can learn how to listen to both of these and put them both as optimal tools and partners with each other, there's so much that we can do. And I think that that's another misconception that we get in regular medicine is that we're really, the victims of a diagnosis or something that's gone wrong with us. It really takes away our autonomy and the and not just the belief, but then the actual manifestation of healing because we feel stuck and we feel helpless. And if there's anything that I love to give to listeners and to any of my people that attend my sound bath or clients I see privately, is that it really is possible to heal. I mean, if I can do it, then so can anybody else because there was nothing that I did that was outside of the human potential that we all possess.
Absolutely. And this bridges the intuitive and the scientific, making this conversation accessible to all perspectives. You've spoken about shifting from fear to into curiosity. How can someone begin that shift when they feel overwhelmed by symptoms or uncertainty?
Well, I mean, there's one thing that kinda comes to mind, and I'm trying to think where I first heard it. I think it was from Sue Morter, who also does energy healing, and she has a book, and I'm thinking of the title right now is, The Energy Codes. And in that book, I think it was the first time that I read this idea of the bus stop conversation, and it kinda stuck with me because I it really triggered me, and I actually resisted it a lot when I first heard it, but it does speak to this idea of how do we turn fear into curiosity. So the story in her book goes that, there's a whole bunch of souls standing around waiting to incarnate into a body in our 3D world. And as the souls are all standing there, they're all discussing with each other, what they're gonna learn in the next, life and what it is they're gonna do. And one soul says, "Wow, I'm gonna really level up, like, I'm gonna take it a crazy way. I'm gonna learn a big lesson. What I want is for my family to be killed by a drunk driver so that I can learn how to forgive the driver." And all the other souls are thinking, "Wow, that's really gonna be difficult. That's really brave of you that you're gonna take on this next big challenge so that you can develop yourself." And then that soul looks around and says, "Well, who's gonna be the driver?" And, finally, one of the souls steps up and says, "Yeah, I guess I'm gonna be the driver." And all of a sudden, it shifts this idea that maybe the universe is not doing this to you, but for you. And then we go from this feeling victimized or poor me, or this fear that this disease is like punishment or it's a life sentence, or that I can't have any dreams, or I'm never going to achieve anything now because I'm going to be stuck in my illness. And you kind of give up on yourself to this idea that this was, like, something you signed up for. This was a spiritual lesson, and that there's gonna be meaning on the other side of the experience that you're having right now. And all you need to look for is what was the messages and what was the reason why you had this put in front of you, and what strengths and resiliency and resources do you have to, uh to make your way through this, and then to become the alchemist of it, to take pain and turn it into beauty. And I mean, I feel like my book was a way for me doing that. It was a promise I made during a dark night of my soul when I was laying on the floor and I couldn't walk and was crawling, that if God would give me the opportunity to learn how to heal myself, that I would help other people. And I think that another layer of healing that that story demonstrates is not just about our own switch from going from being fearful into like curiosity as to why am I being given this and what can I gain from it? How can it end up being something beautiful? But also, how do I forgive those people around me that maybe were karmically signed up to be, whether it's your tormentor or the person that was meant to challenge you or put these difficult situations in front of you? And maybe when we can start to soften and see still that we are all interconnected and that perhaps these other people that have challenged us some way in the quantum field, we're still entangled with them, and maybe it wasn't always in a negative way. Maybe they're really here acting on our behalf. And I know that that might be something that your listeners, especially if something terrible has happened to them, it's a difficult thing to hear because it I don't want it to feel like it suggests that people are in some way responsible or to be blamed for being victimized or traumatized by somebody. But again, it does shift you back into this position of responsibility to make meaning and to shift your role in how you view things because ultimately what you're trying to do is to heal yourself. And that never happens when we live in regret, fear, judgment of other people, and an inability to forgive, whether ourselves or other people in our lives.
Definitely, it's so true. I mean, like you said, that what happened to people, that is not their responsibility, but how they heal from it is definitely their responsibility. So, this conversation has been amazing, Dana. It has helped me realize a lot of things, learn a lot of things, and I'm sure it's the same for our listeners. And I'm sure that they are now more curious and they would like to connect with you on a deeper level or maybe read your book, like you mentioned. So, if they want to do that, how can they do that? Could you share with the listeners?
Yeah, so my book is now available on Amazon and it's called Unlearned Disease, Relearn Well-Being. You can also find me on my website, energyovermatter.com. And from my website, there's multiple ways to connect with me. You can follow me from there on all my socials. I also host a monthly healing circle that's free for anybody to come to. And there we just discuss all things energy healing, spirituality. We do some sound healing, meditation together. And that's just an open community for everybody to connect and to heal together because I do believe that when we heal with other people, it sends a ripple out and it expands the healing. And definitely, we live in a time and age where not only are we evolving as humanity, but we're in deep need of healing.
Great. So, I'll have all the details on my show listing and the listeners can connect with you. So, Dana's story reminds us that healing is not about overpowering the body, but befriending it, listening to its whispers, honoring its wisdom, and allowing every layer of our being to come back into harmony. If something in this conversation opened a door for you, let it guide you towards deeper presence, gentler awareness, and a renewed relationship with yourself. Thank you for joining us, and may you continue to awaken the healer within.